I said, that's the only thing he said.
Is it?
He figured
Well, the rural people have always, in one sense of the word, been discriminated against insofar as rural service is concerned, and we always like to have rural health services within the reach of rural people. It's something that is essential, and it means saving of lives for the people in the area.
The bills are all due. The babies need shoes. I'm busted.
I don't know of any better way to spend my time than making sure that some sick person gets the proper health care. You know, driving down the highway, you'd never expect what's out here. A lot of times in the winter, you could never get a car to this woman if you didn't have a four-wheel drive. This is not as bad as a lot of it is. A lot of times you have to go places you'd think you couldn't get a wheel bar to pick up a sick person. Or
I call Brother Bill.
all right, did you get me out of Kermit?
Yeah, man.
Lord, I hate to beg like a dog for a bone. I'm busted.
I know that little children has died just from diarrhea and vomiting. That used to be a big thing that would take a child in 3 or 4 days. What was so sad, the parents done everything they could. They just didn't have the money, no transportation to get them took care of medically. And you just do all you could with the home remedies, then sit up with them and watch them die, didn't you, Emma? Yeah. Sit up with them. The neighbors would just come in and they'd be a house full of people. And you know, all my life I thought this is ridiculous that people, good people, the best people on earth has to suffer and die for the lack of money. And I said, Lord, if it's ever a chance, if there's ever an opportunity, the price is not too high in labor for me to try to get a clinic for poor people. In the 60s, we organized a welfare rights organization. We knew there were a lot of federal money because war on poverty was booming then. And they gave Floyd County alone $1.5 million a year for health care for the indigent people. So I was one of their patients. In order to get treatment, you go to this outpost, they take your name, they put you in one of those vehicles and haul you to one of the local physicians, and they'd line you up. They'd be a line. They'd put you in the mind of the cheese distributing places and the food stamp office. They'd line you up, and you'd be lined up clear out the door, you know, to try to get into a doctor. And you can imagine about how much health care you got. So that money was a-flying and nobody was getting, people getting worse off, really. And a lot of the physicians put up their own drugstores.
No, let's see, you've got some stitches too, huh?
We started documenting all the problems with this federally funded program, and it was not reaching the people's needs, you know. So we finally got the Office of Health Affairs to listen to us, and they defunded the program. But we organized our own board, wrote our own application, and tried to get refunded with the money they had defunded from this, but they didn't. They wouldn't give it to us, so that's when we had to go on our, we decided we'd do something on our own, and that's when we established the Mud Creek Clinic. Allie is one of the people that was one of the health committee members that was real strong, very outspoken, real fighter. I'd like for you to meet Allie and talk to her.
If you didn't have a car and didn't have money to hire people to take you, you just had to stay at home and live or die. So I got started with, after we organized our welfare rights group, we'd go to Lexington and meet up, and Hazard, and just everywhere, different places, you know, meet up with different ones, and we'd all decide what we was going to do and what we needed. It was really what we needed.
We picketed the Floyd County Comprehensive Health Care Program that was not meeting the needs of the people. We picketed all 8 outposts, and they tried to run over us with the Broncos they were driving, and when we got through doing that, we went to Prestonsburg, went to the health department, we went one door and out there, and we went marched through the courthouse.
They elected 2 from Beach Creek as board members on the start. Then 2 from Toller's Creek, 2 from Little Mud Creek, all these big creeks, you know, Branham's Creek. we ruled it. Well, if we hadn't to sit down, well, there'd been doctors come in here and just took over after we got the clinic. You know, there'd been doctors come in and took the clinic, or maybe our county doctors would have. I don't know where they would have not, but they might have tried it. They'd have had a heck of a time, though, I guess. Yeah, I just make a demand. I'd say, now, we gotta have it our way. It's gonna be the people's way.
One time I got hurt in the mines, and the company paid me wages to not raw compensation, you know, when I got mashed. And in 5 weeks, I went back to my regular job of loading coal. You know, I went to a company doctor when they took me to him. They paid me wages, providing, you know, without not raw compensation, but I didn't have uneducated, no lawyer, didn't know who to see, so I just had to take their word for it. And that's the way the most of the coal miners was sitting in eastern Kentucky. And there's no man could get on welfare, ADC, if he didn't have a pull with the county judge. They played politics with him. It didn't matter if he had 8 children or 10 kids. He starved, he suffered. And that's what brought a lot of disease in our community. Dr. George Archer, he was the mayor at Christiansburg at that time.
And he would always say the MD after his name stood for Mean Democrat, and he was really involved in politics.
Right.
And he, you know, besides, so he had the whole medical system, he and several other doctors ran in the county, and they just had a tight control of it. When the comprehensive health program came in, they saw that they had control of it. They didn't want to bring any new doctors in like was supposed to happen, and just bring all the people into them. But the role of the doctor is very prominent in politics. I guess that's true anywhere, but
Yeah.
especially here.
Yeah, they played a great role in politics in eastern Kentucky ever since my childhood. And they wanted to just use us, you know, as poor people to make us do as they say do. That's the way I'd say they wanted to bound us to the rope. You know, keep it in their hands where they could eat good, live good, ride good. And us sit back and couldn't educate our children with college or nothing, but their kids could. Which we wanted college. There are a lot of people around this country wanted college, but they couldn't afford it. They couldn't make the step. They couldn't get the setup. You see, it's just like that boy of mine that got killed in the coal mine, 19 years old. And 1979. He was in to go to college. He went to Pikeville and signed up. I've got the papers to prove. And I couldn't come with the money. He said, Dad, I won't go. Said, you have to borrow $10,000, will you lose your house? And he said, I'll just go to work in the mines. And he worked a year and something and got killed back on top of the hill here in a truck mine, ununion. He couldn't get a job at a union mine. That was Ricky Lee Hamilton, my son. We had sense and ability, but not the education, knowing what steps to take with the law of our country. In eastern Kentucky, they believe in our Constitution, but they didn't know how to go at it.
I first approached the head of the president of the County Medical Association, that is the leading physician within the county, George Archer, who's also mayor of Prestonsburg. And I couldn't get into his office for an interview, and then I finally ran into him in front of the post office and came up to his car and said, introduced myself, told him that I was doing a my dissertation. And he asked me one question: where's your home? I said, well, I'm a graduate student at the University of Kentucky. He said, no, where are you from? I said, Massachusetts. He said, I don't have anything to say to you. The school superintendent was amenable to an interview. But I remember 2 things about that initial interview. First, he explained that he was the only person in the war on poverty to have a Purple Heart, that he remembered some of the people from Mud Creek coming to the school, and that he had a black eye in a altercation that resulted from that visit. And the second thing is that he said he was probably the only school superintendent in eastern Kentucky to keep a blackjack in his desk, because he was never going to be intimidated again. Echo was a different kind of poor people. There's a different kind of organization of poor people. It was an organization of poor people, which is different. They felt that their problems had attracted federal monies to the county, and they wanted a hand in devising solutions with that money to their own problems.
I was with my brother Jack in West Virginia in 1960 and spent 6 weeks there, and I knew that right after he became president, he signed the first executive order for a food stamp program. Then my brother Bob went on a tour of the country down through the Delta on the issues of hunger, and he came here in 1968. Traveled in these same valleys and same hollers and met some of you at that period of time. In the early 60s, we had a president of the United States that said hunger is unacceptable in the United States. And we passed laws and we tried to make some progress with it, and we made some progress. We didn't answer all the problems, and we didn't get all the jobs that we needed, nor have we gotten decent quality health care for all the American people. But nor do we have decent housing for all the people. But we started to make some progress. And in the last 3 years, we have seen significant cut in those programs. I would just hope that as American families all over this country sit down at the Thanksgiving table tomorrow, that they realize that there are millions of Americans who can't even not only afford a turkey, but maybe having just one meal a day. And there'll be millions of children that'll be in the same kind of situation. And tomorrow, I just hope those Americans are going to say a prayer for those families. And after Thanksgiving Day, they're going to get a hold of their member of Congress and their Senate and their president and say, what are we doing about hunger in America?
We went to Washington, D.C., you know, they tried to cut the food stamps out and put the commodities back in. We went to every senator's office. We asked them to eat what we eat, and we was going to eat commodities for 5 days. So they was good enough to do that. Some of them did. I don't know what to eat when they got home, you know, but kind of solved that problem. They used to. Don't matter if you're 90 years old, you go down there and tell them you want to sign up for food stamps, and they just flat tell you didn't qualify. And they didn't ask you your name or how old you was or what you did. They just say you didn't qualify. Well, there wasn't nothing you. A lot of people didn't know any better. See, wasn't nothing you could do. Just come back home and sit down and say you didn't qualify. And they do them the same way about their Social Securities and things. But see, they got their pay just the same. It didn't make any difference to them whether they signed them up or not. You know, they got their pay come just the same. An old man that lived over Wheelwright, he'd worked in the mines all his life. We know of 42 years he'd worked in the mines. Never drawed no Social Security, never drawed nothing. Take him, signed him up, and about, I guess, 10 months or 10 months to a year, he got a letter from the Social Security Department in Baltimore, Maryland, said that they found him able to work, that he wasn't entitled to Social Security. Able and physically to work, common work, and him 92 years old. So we used that letter to read to every meeting to other old people, you know, and we'd take the old man right along with us. He stayed with us till he died, and I think he lived till he was about 98. There are thousands of them right here in this county that don't have one decent meal a day because they don't draw enough to live on. And if you rent, you pay so much rent, you'd be surprised when I tell you I pay $85 a month for this house here. And there's no water, no bathroom, and I pay it or I just have to get out and leave. And I'm not the only one like this. There's hundreds and hundreds of people in the same shape I'm in, see. Most of the old timers died, and what ain't dead is sick, and you know, it just vanished away. I'm still chairman of the Welfare Rights Organization, but they ain't none.
Why people resist changes in health care? There was, in fact, a great deal of dependence built up around the poverty within the county, that because people were poor and people were dependent upon welfare and other government programs, local officials could benefit by administering those programs in such a way. I think what they underestimated was the ability of people to organize and preserve and protect the services started with their efforts and on their behalf. For poor people to come into control of their own programs, in fact, gave them their own political base.
Somebody's got to blow their horn, you know, and the more the merrier. So, you know, it's like a bunch of sticks. One stick's easy cut down and broke off, but if you get a handful, they're tougher. So the more people, the stronger the issue. And it really made a big difference in eastern Kentucky. The Welfare Rights Organization really did. The Mud Creek Clinic was born right out of the Welfare Rights Organization.
This time I'd like to turn it over to Yulee. Everybody knows Yulee.
You don't have to say all.
I'd like to thank everybody that's here. I think this is a glorious moment for Mud Creek Clinic. It's the biggest thing to me. It's a dream come true. It's 10 years of hard work. We've worked hard and fought hard for a clinic on Mud Creek. This is the beginning of a new era for the Mud Creek Clinic. I want to thank everybody that's helped in any way to make this day possible. To me, I just can't say enough. But I'd like to recognize Congressman Carl D. Perkins. He's been a great help to this community. I think he's one of the best congressmen the United States ever had. Speak now.
Eula Hall and all the board of directors, good friends, and ladies and gentlemen, I just wished Eula Hall had made that statement about me about 15 years ago.
I didn't have a clinic then.
But Eula has been one of the most dedicated people that I have ever known to try to stay on a job and bring services in this country. You know, when the clinic burned down here a year or so ago, or whenever it was, if you had not had a person with much drive at that time, your health services here at Mud Creek would all be over with. You would not have had any more health services. But she had the drive and the know-how and was dedicated that everybody should receive health services and stayed on the job and did not surrender to anybody. And as a result, you see what we're doing here today. I've got to brag on her and tell you that she's one of the finest ladies I've ever known. Maybe I thought she was treating me a little bit harsh one day, but I never did get mad at her. No time in the world. But she has done so much for this country, and we will work together in the future. We'll all work together to bring the good people in this area better health services. Well, thank you. Yeah.
They're gonna get me in my spot here. They got me a spot.
Okay.
Yeah. See my name?
I get you to stand just right behind it so I can get you and your name and the outline and everything all in the picture here.
This will be my office, I hope.
Just a step forward there, just so you're in your office. All right.
But it's not the end. We're gonna have, Mud Creek's gonna get their fair share of what they've long overdue. I grew up rough and hard, and we was what you call sharecroppers. We'd have to rent and pay a third of what we raised to the landowner. If we tended the hillside, we paid a third. If we tended the bottomlands, his bottomland we'd pay half. And we lived off of the food we raised, and we never had enough money for clothes or medicine or anything extra, just food you'd raised. You know, I used to stay with people. I was what you call a hard girl. And hard girls are just really slaves, you know. They're paid by the people that got money. The most important thing in the ironing was the men's shirts. And if they got a shirt and it had one little wrinkle in it, or a lot of them, they wouldn't put it on. You'd have to wash it and iron it again. And I really, you know, it was hard work. I done that until I was 14. And in World War II had started, and they was coming and recruiting people to go up north and worked in Cannon factories. They promised us 40 cents an hour and transportation free, but when we got up there, they started withholding transportation and lodging out of our wages, and we wasn't drawing no money. And my shoes had wore out, and when we started, after we'd worked a while, we didn't get paid. The Lacy group that went up there from eastern Kentucky, we decided we'd strike. But you know, it was a mistake because we wasn't old enough to understand how to organize a strike. But we had a time there for about 2 hours. I learned a lot. But we never got paid. I got deported, and a bunch of them went to jail. They stayed in jail. A lot of the boys did till they got their calls for the Army. They put them on rock pile, put them out, and give them 6 months hard labor.
I'll take you to the pen.
Okay. See what, if I got anything worth worrying about here. I love to get a favorable decision on a hearing. It tickles me to death.
What kind of hearing?
Social Security or SSI or whatever. I'd be afraid to die. I'd be afraid to die if I was Reagan. I'd hate to see all these hungry little faces that I'd have to witness and all the suffering and the, you know, even if he don't cut it, he scares them so bad that a lot of people get sick from worrying about it. You know, I know they call me up and they say, Eula, if I lose my state card, you know, what will I do? If they stop my Social Security or if they take my food stamp, what will I do? We had 4 suicides in 1 week here. And you know, the economy and the frustration brings that on. You know, they don't know what to do, they're scared. They know they ain't gonna go out here tomorrow and get a job, feed their family. Ain't no way you can, there ain't no jobs. You don't have to be an expert to see that. You don't have to be a brain to know that. You just have to be around here a while.
The lesson on the poor and the needy, huh?
Last ride, Stephen.
Cheese run out.
Run out of cheese. No more cheese. Rice, honey, and flour. That's all that's available right now. We run out of cheese. We just don't get enough to go around. Put it that way. There's been a time or two that we've had a few left over, but most of the time we don't have enough to go around.
With the decline in income and the decline of federal programs and the decline of public commitment to the health care of poor people, the clinic actually is in partnership with other programs, and one partner has let his end down, that is the federal government. And if it wasn't for that determination and that tenacity locally, there wouldn't be any health services. But it's not only just the health services going within the clinic, but it's the unemployment. It's the reduced benefits. All of these things in Mud Creek and elsewhere have led to increases in infant mortality, increases in hunger, very unhealthy conditions. If health care is a right, it's still a right to be achieved. And Mud Creek represented one step and one model in achieving that right. But more importantly, it demonstrated what health care as a right would look like. People providing not only health services, but with an awareness of the context that promotes the well-being of an individual. It gives us hope that health care as a right is possible, and that it would make a difference.
It's the personal things that, you know, they see that people care, and if we can help, we always try to do that. And like we have coffee, and if people want coffee, they just go in the kitchen and get it just as though they're home. And they feel that they own part of it, which they do, and it's theirs.
Well, he used to work mines, but he got one of his eyes put out, and he draws back bones now. That's all he did.
Back when I worked in the mines, you go to the mine to work, come back home, and most of the summer we worked in the cornfields and raised corn, cattle, hogs, chickens. And now they ain't nobody in our country around up there got a milk cow, or hardly one got a chicken. And mighty few that ever keeps a hog. They go to the store to get what to eat. They ain't got something, money coming or something, they just can't eat. Nothing from deep.
I'm gonna send her to get a hearing aid. She mentioned it, so she might be ready to get one. Okay? All right.
Have you ever been told you have heart trouble?
No.
Have you ever had chest pain?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Have you ever noticed that your legs were swelling?
They did one time, but that was the time I wasn't. See, every so often, they told me to come check them out. I never did. They get heavy on me and I keep moving.
Did you injure this hand?
They cut across there.
It's been, okay. Okay. How hot do you keep your house at night?
At night,
Yeah.
60 degrees.
I like to sleep in a cold room with plenty cover over me. I never did like to sleep in a hot room.
That's good for your breathing, too.
I know that.
Come on, I'm going to introduce you to Miriam, who's going to tell you about the foods you can eat.
Cook chicken, make dumplings, stuff like that. Greens, I fix greens.
Good.
A girl
You like-
bunch of stuff this year I can't give away.
Corn.
Turnips.
Oh yeah? You can always bring them here.
Huh?
You want
You can always, you can always bring turnips here.
Well,
Sure.
we'll bring you some.
How many you want? Bushel?
I wish they'd declare something again. You know, there was a lot of good accomplishments in the 60s, and people ain't forgot that. People ain't forgot how they got their black lung benefits. They ain't forgot about how they got the law amended. They ain't forgot about how they got better lunches. They ain't forgot about how they got as bad as the roads are. You should have seen them then. I know what it was then. I know what it is now. There've been a lot of battles won. There've been a lot of battles won. Like the civil rights movement was a big improvement. The same thing with the Welfare Rights Organization. There was a lot of good programs born out of that. There was a lot of eyes opened and a lot of, people made aware that you can do something. People used to think there's nothing you could do, and they just sit back, especially women. They thought they were just trapped for life, and generation after generation just served their purpose and went on out, But it's different now, and it's by organizing and working together. I see a little bit of all of it. I see the people that's more fortunate to have plenty. They got nice homes and new cars and all that. I'm glad they got what they got and that they're living comfortable and they're making it. But I worry about the people that's not as fortunate, that don't have anything or very little of anything.
Now, Lord, I'm no thief, but I can go wrong. I'm so busted. The food that we canned last summer is gone. I'm busted. The fields are all bare. The cotton won't grow. Me,